Archaeologists don't go looking for horror. They go looking for pottery, foundations, old trash. The entire discipline runs on patience and small brushes. But across the Americas, from Arctic tundra to Peruvian dunes, the ground keeps handing back things nobody was prepared to find. Not artifacts, not ruins, evidence of what human beings did to each other when the world fell apart. Number 10. Lovelock Cave, 250 tons of bat guano. That's what miners David Pugh and James Hart came to harvest in 1911 from a cave near Lovelock, Nevada. Beneath it, they found bones, baskets, weapons, and what they described as a 6.5-foot mummy with red hair. The northern Paiute had a name for what lived in that cave: the Chichén, red-haired cannibal giants. Sarah Winnemucca recorded the legend in 1882. According to Paiute oral history, they trapped the last of them inside and set the entrance on fire. Severe fire damage in the geological layers near the cave mouth is consistent with that account. Over decades of excavation, roughly 60 human remains were recovered, all normal height. Coprolites from the cave contained human hair. Bones showed cut marks consistent with flesh removal. The red hair has a simpler explanation. Alkaline soil turns hair pigment rusty over time. But then came the DNA. One individual dated to roughly 200 AD carried haplogroup QP404, a Eurasian lineage originating in Bronze Age Central Asia, not Native American. The best adult mummy specimen, the one that could have settled the most questions, was boiled and destroyed by a local fraternal lodge that wanted the skeleton for initiation rituals. Number 9. The Windover Bog Bodies. The backhoe operator saw skulls in his bucket and called the police. The medical examiner suspected mass murder. A forensic expert believed the remains were modern Caucasian. Then radiocarbon dating came back, 7,200 years before present. Steve Vanderjagt was clearing a muck pond near Titusville, Florida, in 1982, miles from Cape Canaveral. The developer halted construction, redesigned the master plan, and donated $60,000 in pumping equipment over 3 field seasons. Archaeologists recovered 168 skeletons. At least 91 skulls still contained preserved brain tissue, shrunken to a quarter of their original size but retaining surface features and cell structure visible under microscopy. The preservation required bodies to be placed in the water within 24 to 48 hours of death. In Florida heat, any longer would have liquefied the brains completely. A wooden stake driven through a fabric shroud kept each body from floating. A practical decision 7,000 years ago that accidentally created one of the most important archaeological sites in the hemisphere. The DNA matched no known Native American group, no known prehistoric population. The people who buried their dead here with such care belong to a lineage that has, so far, no living descendants anyone can identify. Number 8. The Chichén Itzá children. For decades, scholars assumed the sacrificial victims at Chichén Itzá were primarily young girls and women. Textbooks repeated it. Documentaries built narratives around it. Then, in 2024, DNA analysis proved all of them wrong. During the 1967 construction of an airport runway near the sacred cenote, workers broke into a cholton, an underground cistern the Maya had repurposed as a burial chamber. Inside were the remains of more than 100 children. The bones sat largely unstudied for over 50 years. Then, a team from the Max Planck Institute extracted DNA from 64 of the skulls. Every single one was male. Most were between 3 and 6 years old. They kept rerunning the tests because they couldn't believe it. Lead researcher Rodrigo Barquera said, but the data held. At least a quarter of the children were closely related, and among them were 2 pairs of identical twins. Identical twins occur in roughly 0.4% of pregnancies. Finding 2 pairs among 64 individuals does not happen by chance. The Popol Vuh, the Maya creation narrative, tells of divine twin brothers who descend into the underworld, are sacrificed by the lords of death, and are reborn. The Maya weren't killing at random, they were casting a myth in flesh, selecting twin boys to reenact a story of divine sacrifice and resurrection. The cholton sat 300 meters from the sacred cenote, the sinkhole the Maya believed opened directly into Xibalba, the underworld. The underworld had a door. They were sending children through it. Number 7. Jamestown. William Kelso noticed human teeth scattered among butchered horse bones and dog bones in a cellar at James Fort, Virginia, 2.5 feet below the surface, mixed into a trash deposit from the winter of 1609. The bones belonged to a 14-year-old English girl the team called Jane. 4 shallow chop marks on her forehead. Tentative. Incomplete. Someone tried to open her skull from the front and failed. They turned her over. A hatchet split the back of the skull. A knife was driven into the left temple to pry it open and extract the brain. Cut marks along the jaw targeted the cheeks, tongue, and facial tissue. In 17th century English cooking, animal cheeks, tongues, and brains were common fare. Whoever processed Jane followed a familiar butchery pattern, just applied it to a person. The cuts were close together. She wasn't fighting back, she was already dead. That winter killed roughly 80% of the 300 colonists. By spring, about 60 remained. Drought, a Powhatan siege, disease, a hurricane that destroyed the resupply fleet. They ate horses, dogs, rats, snakes, and shoe leather before they ate each other. 5 written accounts reference cannibalism. Historians dismissed them for centuries as political slander. Jane ended the debate. Europeans had spent decades using cannibalism accusations to classify indigenous peoples as savages. The physical evidence showed Europeans were the ones who did it. Number 6. Cowboy Wash. A single coprolite settled a debate that had lasted 30 years. Montezuma County, Colorado. In 1994, excavators found 7 dismembered skeletons on the floors of 2 pit houses. 4 adults, 1 adolescent, 2 children. Bones stripped of flesh, roasted, cracked for marrow. Skulls opened for brains. A distinctive sheen called pot polish showed prolonged boiling in ceramic vessels. In the 3rd pit house, otherwise empty, a human coprolite sat in the cooled ash of the fire pit. Dr. Richard Marlar developed an immunological assay targeting human myoglobin, a protein found only in skeletal and heart muscle. It cannot enter the digestive tract except by eating human flesh. 21 samples, all positive. The cooking pots tested positive. Storage vessels tested negative. Hospital controls, all negative. The coprolite contained no plant matter at all, only human muscle tissue, left deliberately in the victim's own hearth. Lead archaeologist Brian Billman called it a final insult, an act of contempt from the attackers. After 1200 AD, the ancestral Puebloans left the Four Corners entirely. The wheels came off. That was a village. What comes next is a civilization. Number 5. The Crow Creek Massacre. For more than 600 years, the only record of what happened was the ditch itself, a long trench cut into a bluff above the Missouri River in South Dakota, eroding quietly into the current. In 1978, bones started coming out of the bank. Archaeologists received permission from the Crow Creek Sioux Tribal Council to excavate. They pulled out 486 people, men, women, and children. 90% of the skulls showed cut marks across the forehead, scalping. A quarter had knife wounds on the first vertebra, consistent with decapitation or throat cutting. Tongues removed, teeth broken out, hands and feet severed. The mutilation rate across the entire collection approached 100%. The bodies had been left in the open for weeks. Scavengers chewed the ends of long bones. Smaller bones from hands and feet were scattered or missing entirely. Young women of childbearing age were conspicuously absent from the remains. Either they escaped, or they were taken. 2 individuals had survived a previous scalping. Their skulls were actively regrowing bone when the final attack came. The village had known it was coming. 50 houses sat on a bluff. Residents were building a new ditch and palisade wall to slow the assault. They didn't finish in time. Someone came back weeks later, not to save anyone, only to gather what the scavengers had left, push it into the ditch, and set a fire on top. Radiocarbon dating of that charcoal gives the date. Roughly 1325 AD. Number 4. Cahokia Mound 72. 20,000 marine shell beads arranged in the shape of a falcon. 2 bodies laid on top, and beneath them, a city's worth of dead. Cahokia sat in the Mississippi floodplain near modern St. Louis. At its peak, 10 to 20,000 people. Mound 72, a small ridgetop structure, contained between 270 and 280 bodies across 5 mass graves. The largest held 53 young women aged 15 to 30, arranged in 2 layers separated by matting. Most showed no blunt force trauma. They were likely strangled. Then there is the violent pit, 39 men, women, and children with crushed skulls, decapitations, arrow wounds. The bodies were dumped, not arranged. Kristen Hedman noted that some fingers appeared to have been digging in the sand. Not all of them were dead when they went into the ground. For decades, the 2 central figures were called a great warrior chief and his retainer. In 2016, reanalysis revealed one was male, one female. The warrior chief narrative collapsed. Mound 96, nearly its mirror image, almost certainly contains similar burials. It has never been opened. Under current law, it probably never will be. The worst is still ahead. Number 3. The Aztec Skull Tower. February 2015. An INH excavation team at 24 Guatemala Street in Mexico City dug through colonial porcelain, hit a basalt floor, and then hundreds of skull fragments started coming out of the earth. A cylindrical tower 5 to 6 meters in diameter, built from human skulls mortared with lime and volcanic gravel. Every face turned inward. More than 603 skulls recovered, roughly 11,000 bone fragments across 5 building phases. This was not display. This was construction material. Skulls pierced, threaded onto racks after sacrifice, then transferred to the tower and cemented into permanent architecture. The demographic breakdown overturned assumptions. Of 214 skulls analyzed, about 37% were female. Some belonged to children. The belief that only captured male warriors were sacrificed was wrong. Conquistador Andrés de Tapia had estimated 136,000 skulls on the main rack. Historians called it colonial propaganda for centuries. The excavation proved the scale was real. Only one of at least 7 known skull structures in the Aztec capital has been excavated. Cortés razed everything, paved over the ruins, and built colonial Mexico City on top. The tower sat 12 feet beneath a modern street for nearly 500 years before a salvage dig brought it back. Number 2. Residential schools. Ground-penetrating radar does not see bones. It sees soil that has been disturbed. In May 2021, GPR specialist Dr. Sarah Beaulieu surveyed 1 hectare of the 65-hectare former Kamloops Indian residential school property. She detected approximately 215 anomalies consistent with burials. She had covered less than 2% of the grounds. Kamloops triggered a chain reaction. Cowboys reported 751 potential graves. Penelocoot identified more than 160. Williams Lake found 93. The residential school system ran from the 1880s through 1996. 150,000 indigenous children were taken from their families and placed in government-funded, church-run institutions, forbidden from speaking their languages, beaten for it. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission estimated roughly 6,000 children died. The true number is almost certainly higher, because the schools stopped keeping records when children disappeared. No remains have been excavated at Kamloops, specifically. GPR detects anomalies, not confirmed burials. That distinction matters for accuracy. It does not change what survivors had been saying for generations. Children went into those schools and never came home. Number 1. Juan Chaquito Las Llamas. In 2011, human bones started eroding from the coastal dunes near Trujillo, Peru. Local residents called archaeologist Gabriel Prieto. He was already excavating a temple down the road. He redirected immediately. 20 bodies and 30 animal remains surfaced in less than 5 hours. By 2016, the count reached more than 140 children and more than 200 juvenile llamas, the largest known mass child sacrifice in world history. The children ranged from 5 to 14 years old, boys and girls. Cut marks across ribs and sternums showed chests sliced open and pulled apart for heart removal. Clean, horizontal, methodical. Copper knives. At a nearby site, one such knife had a rattle attached. It sounded with every cut. Faces were painted with red cinnabar-based pigment before death. Cranial modifications indicated children drawn from different ethnic groups across the Chimu Empire. Footprints preserved in surrounding mud traced a procession. Children and llamas led from opposite edges of the bluff, meeting in the center. Directly beneath the sacrificial layer sits a distinct mud deposit from catastrophic El Nino flooding. The Chimu were bargaining with their gods. They sent the most valuable thing they had. At the nearby Pampa La Cruz site, another 132 children and 260 llamas. Combined total across both sites, 269 children, 3 adults, 466 llamas. Archaeologist Luis Castillo, surveying the coast. Put it simply, wherever you dig, there's another one. Within decades, Inca armies conquered Chichén. The sacrifice bought nothing. Every one of these discoveries was an accident. A backhoe in Florida, guano miners in Nevada, bones washing out of sand in Peru, a ditch eroding along a river in South Dakota. Oral history was right every time. Paiute fire legends matched the stratigraphy. Survivor testimony matched the radar. Aztec codex descriptions matched the excavation scale. Maya mythology matched the DNA. And at nearly every site, the central figures were children. The ground doesn't forget, it just takes its time.